Well done. Terrific. You've obviously got fantastic fingers.
What?
Well, your technique, your finger technique is extraordinarily easy, I would say, facile. It's remarkably brilliant. It means that you're able to play any of this music without any apparent effort. I know you've probably practiced it a lot as well, but it comes easy to you, yes. The result is it's too quick almost all the time. And it's too quick for the ear. It's brilliantly done. Extraordinary. I've never played that Etude, but I have played the sonata quite a lot. And it took me a long time to get to grips with it, because it's so easy for it to sound. I don't know whether you know the English word doodling. Do you know what doodling means? It's like just sort of, like you're in a cocktail lounge, yeah? And that's what it began to sound like. Sort of nice little arabesques and things that weren't quite clear. There's so much more to it than that. It's so passionate and so sensuous. You need time for it to express those things. And in every other way, you're playing it fantastically well, but you're not giving it time. Now, the same goes for the Etude. You know, all that stuff in the Etude where you've got in the two upper fingers there, the fourth and fifth finger, couldn't hear a single one. All I heard was a chord, because it's so quick, and I could see that you were playing it, but I couldn't hear it. Just like that. And you don't want it like that, of course. Now, I'm sure you were in here when we were talking about speed before, weren't you? You know, the fact that you're so close to the instrument means that you hear it differently to everyone else. And it can sound too slow to you if it's actually working for everybody else. That's really true, though. And did you hear my mantra? Can you remember it? No one will ever tell you it's too slow. Ever. And I don't mean you, and I don't mean these particular pieces. I mean pianists as a whole. We're never, ever told it's too slow, unless it's a slow movement. Because it usually is too fast. Partly, of course, because if you're doing a performance as opposed to a rehearsal or a private practice session, you're more nervous, so you play it quicker anyway. And I can assure you, and as we've got a conductor over there, I can assure you that most of them know perfectly well in advance that the vast majority of piano soloists play the concerts more quickly than they do the rehearsals. Do you understand me? You see what and that's what is happening to you. You're probably a little bit nervous because it's a public situation, and it's so quick that you can't hear what's going on. I can't. You can. I could do with a music desk, really, but never mind. So what I would like to do is try to give you the possibility in the sonata, which I know better than the Etude, of a really powerful impact, because it really can have, as opposed to it just being nice. You know what I mean by that? Yeah. First thing. Ritenuto, I suspect, is what that means. Not ritardando, yeah? Are you doing a ritenuto? I think you are. Now, not too fast. So that this has gravity, real serious and very mysterious, slightly menacing quality, rather than it just floating away, you know. And then later on, please keep this down, because there's something gigantic coming up later which needs to, like the sun comes out, yeah. It's just so wonderful if you do it in a certain way. This is what you did. It's all sorts of, I don't know what the right word is. Well, yeah, it's too fast. That's the simple version. But it's the reason. And the result is that it's not serious. Yeah, something like that. And you change tempo a lot, which means it loses its pulse. And its pulse is important. Well, in all music, so. It then says rubato. Do you get my point? You've already been doing so much rubato. Well, it's not really rubato, it's just not very rhythmic. It then says rubato. What are you going to do then? Well, yes. That's enough. Rubato again. Something like that. This is one of the most special moments in the whole of piano music, if you make it work. Keep it down. It's expressive, but it's down. It's waiting for something massive, yeah? The notes, but you see what I mean? Maybe I'm too loud, I don't know. You might think so. It's only marked 40, but it's just so special. And if you just make it grow without pushing it at all, hold it back, in fact, tempo-wise. Do you want to try that from maybe? Let's go from bar 21. If you've got the numbers, okay. That's very good until then. Yeah, and then you doodled. Oh, come on. And then you see, what I'm trying to get to is the possibility of someone who doesn't know the music listening and being able to feel the pulse as they're listening. And it's quite hard in music like this, but it's possible. And I think it's probably very necessary. Yeah. Can we do the same again? 21. One, two, three, one. just go back to 29 and we'll play it together. Yeah? Back? Yeah, well, that's what I intended to do. Just to make sure it didn't... If it rushes, you see, it then becomes less effective. It just this word doodling, I'm sure that you can find a meaning for it. It's kind of a slang term in a way, but people who have a pencil and a piece of paper and they're talking and they just do this idly, like a habit, that's doodling. So that's the closest I can get to describing how some of it sounded. Let me see now. And it's very important in all music, when there's a climax, which is what that amounts to there, not to rush into it, but almost to hold it back, even if it's not marked with the rallentando, to actually do a tiny rallentando into the actual moment so that it goes like that instead of it. Yeah. Just play just before that, can you? Can we go from maybe 39? Until the very beat before the climax, that was very good. But then it did that. I can't remember the notes, I'm sorry, but yeah. You understand where I'm going? It's the most glorious moment of the whole of Scriabin, I think, this place. Make the most of it. It's that sort of effect that I don't think you want to produce that, do you? You would like it to be much more present. Well, do it then. Just don't feel the pressure to play it so quickly. And give every note its value. The same applies in the development part, which went at a kind of allegro. It's much quicker than the beginning. All this, where you've got the octaves. Whatever it is. Yeah. Well, I think you probably heard me say before the number of the hundreds of pianists I've heard in competitions where I've written too fast. I actually have what they call a macro on my iPad, because I write everything on an iPad when I'm listening, and it's AFAP, as fast as possible. And it just spells it out for me, because it's so often the case, you know. And I'll say that mantra again: no one will ever tell you it's too slow. Am I right? Has anybody ever played the piano and somebody said it's too slow? Ever? No, I didn't think so. So the same applies to the rest of the piece, and there are even more notes in the coda, and you just don't want to have that, you know, that terrible sound of just drivelling over the keyboard. So much more to it than that. Yeah. And then the same does apply to the Etude. And I would say that if you can solve that problem, it would be fantastic what you're doing. If you take about I don't know, a third of the time more over all those pieces, all the pieces you're playing, because I can imagine it would be the same in other things, then it would be so fantastic what you do. Really great playing. But you really do have to think very hard about I always think it's a good idea to think of those people who don't know the piece, rather than somebody who does, listening. Play it to the ones who don't know and see if you can get something across to them about the music being wonderful. This is wonderful music, and I'm going to show you how wonderful it is. And they're going to agree with you if they can tell what you're doing. That's really all it amounts to. You don't need me to tell you anything about your technique, because it's fantastic. And the sound you make is great too. You just need to add space to it and breathe. It's quite a good thing to think about. All the music we play is a song. Sometimes it's a dance, but usually it's a song. If we think like that, and imagine the sort of instincts that a singer would apply to the music you're playing, rhythmic instincts, how to phrase, where to breathe, and all those things, it transforms it. It means that you're playing music and not just the piano. Is there anything else you want to ask me? Or anybody else, for that matter? I know I'm big, but people always seem very afraid to challenge what I say. And I promise I won't bite or hit anyone. Yeah, please.
I just wonder about the extent to which a pianist's tempo choices are influenced by which recordings they are used to hearing, or maybe the first recording of the piece that they heard, and if that sort of sets like a baseline tempo for them.
Well, I think you know the answer to your own question, really, don't you? Yeah. Yes. I think that's probably one of my life's lessons was that most of the music that I concentrated on when I was like a student age and for the next 10 years, maybe plus, after being a student, most of what I played was new music. So I didn't have any recordings to listen to. I had to use my own judgment. It wasn't particularly consciously decided to do that, but that's the way it turned out. And I was asked to do a lot of new music, and actually also slightly earlier 20th century music, where the composer is so much more specific in the notation than the earlier ones were. In other words, there wasn't so much room for what we called interpretation. And I think I got into the habit when I started playing more earlier music. I was already in the habit of just sticking to the score and playing from my own musical instincts rather than copying a CD. What I think is probably slightly difficult to explain, but I think it's true. You can't copy a CD. You can't copy another artist because there are aspects of that artist that you can never even understand. All you can do is copy their tempos and their phrasing and things like that. But you can't copy the innermost personality. So don't try. There's just no point. Even if you succeeded, what's the point of that? You're just another version of the same thing, you know. I mentioned before that I studied briefly with Messiaen, and he was such phenomenal. He had such insight into this kind of thing, partly because he was not really a pianist. He was pretty good on the piano, but basically he was an organist and a phenomenal composer. And somehow he transmitted the idea of seeing what the composer wrote on the basis of what they wrote down, rather than what other people have done, what the traditions might be. Some of the traditions are great, of course they are. And some of the artists we like to copy or follow are phenomenal. Not always, but mostly. Some of the traditions are really awful. They're just basically carbon copies of each other. And of course we don't want to be part of that. There's no point in doing it at all unless you're doing something original that comes from here, not from an instinct to do something different, because that's something else. When you decide to do something deliberately different in order just simply to be spotted. We all know who we're talking about, don't we? So, yes, that's my answer. Don't listen to too many CDs. I still learn new pieces quite often. I'm in the middle of doing the Bach-Busoni transcriptions, for example, now. And you can hear performances mostly from the early days of the 20th century, if you want to. You can get, but I don't want to hear them. I'm going to wait until at least I've performed them myself first, and then I might listen to someone else. But until then, the score is what matters. It's very tempting, isn't it? Particularly, I suppose, if you're in college, if you're student age, it's very tempting to go and listen to big name performances. Yeah. And it's very nice, but it doesn't work. That's the trouble. Yeah. Anything else I can answer? Annabelle, you must have some question about my comments. Well, thank you, but as Annabella knows, I came from Britain 2 days ago, which means that I had an hour's sleep last night, basically. So I hope I'm making sense, because it's quite possible I'm not. Well, 7-hour time change is not done, and I are not friends. I don't do time changes well, and I never have done. And I've tried several hundred times, but it's never really worked. Anyway, it's a pleasure talking to you. Thank you for listening and for coming, and thank you for fantastic playing. Really, is it okay if we have lunch? I think that's for you.